Welcome to In Search of Catholic School Excellence, the show where we spotlight the programs, people, and practices making a real difference in Catholic education today. If you're a school leader striving to build a community of faith, excellence, and innovation, you've come to the right place. Each episode brings you ideas that are working, stories that inspire, and new possibilities for your school's mission. Let's explore what's working and what's possible. Welcome back, folks, to another one of our summer series episodes, Let's Talk Books. Today we're joined by Robert Begley, Strategic Communication Advisor, speaker, and author of Voices of Reason, Lessons for Liberty's Leaders. Robert helps executives, entrepreneurs, and emerging leaders align their voice with their character so they earn trust, inspire confidence, and create lasting impact. In today's conversation, we'll explore how the lessons from Voices of Reason can help middle school, high school, and college students become more courageous, ethical, and effective communicators. Thank you, Robert, for joining us. I appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you, Tom. I think your podcast is amazing. I think dealing with schools, education is the biggest problem in the United States. For some time, it has been. So the work you're doing just on this podcast, and I know what you do in your profession, dealing with schools and how to improve them is really important. So that makes me super grateful to be here.
Well, I'm glad you said it. It's funny. I'm reading a book right now called Teaching Machines about the history of basically tech in education. And they're talking
Mhm.
about the problems of 100 years ago, and they're the same.
Yes,
Nothing's
yes,
changed.
that's
You know,
right. That's right.
I mean,
Yeah,
things have changed, but nothing's changed, right? We had solved the same problem. So
yeah.
anyway, I appreciate those kind words. And once again, for joining us. This is great. It's a rarity that we actually get the author on with us. So I appreciate you joining. To get started, why did you want to write this book? We've known each other for a while, and I've
Yes.
even attended some of your courses on how to build clarity and confidence in my speaking.
Mhm.
So I know the value of all that, but why did you convert a lot of that knowledge into a book?
I think the main reason is fear of public speaking. It's known that most people, a high percentage of people have this fear. I experienced it when I went to Catholic school way back in the 19th in New York City. And I had to get up in front of a group and speak. And I was terrified. So I saw that as a need to address that. How did I overcome that myself? And then on top of that is the importance of having the courage to say things that people might not agree with. If I
Mhm.
go back again to Sacred Heart in the Bronx, which is where I first heard Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. And I saw on a bulletin board Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. These things had big impacts on me.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to analyze these famous speeches and show how people today could learn from these courageous people from the past.
Yeah, and you not only take the just taking those ideas and regurgitating to them, but like you've broken them down. And I
Yes.
love that in like a great teacher, you break down and you kind of give us a little glimpse as to what's happening in the speech, and you give us some applications and exercises for us to work on so that we can take advantage of the same thing. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring you on is this not only is it a great book, but I think it's a great book for education.
Well, thank you, Tom. Yes, we can read as many books as we want, but if we want to ride a bicycle, reading a book is not going to help. You have to actually get on the thing, fall off it, get up, bruise your knees, and practice over and over again. So, yes, I aim to make this book by having some exercises for the reader. And if I could just emphasize the importance of thinking. One
Hmm.
reason people fear speaking is they don't really know how to think. And so public embarrassment is it reaches such a height in people's psyche because they get flustered because they don't know how to think. And that's again, a proper education would teach you, instead of telling you what to think, it would teach you how to think. And I wanted to bring that to light as well. So respect the reader by saying, hey, do some of these exercises in your own mind,
Hmm.
you'll gain greater awareness of your own limitations and how you can grow.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're re-emphasizing the idea that this you got to practice this.
Yes.
Obviously, somebody who's going to get up in front of a boardroom or a classroom and they're going to do their thing, most of the time that's going to be a pretty like it's going to feel like a very big presentation, and they're going to have a lot of anxiety potentially. But if they know the topic, and this is why in schools you typically start off with an about me project where the kids can just talk about themselves. Like if they
Yeah.
can't talk about themselves, who are they going to talk about?
Yes.
So, but you give them the opportunity to get up there and hopefully be able to speak confidently about a topic. But it really just comes down to a lot of practice. And throughout the book, you're emphasizing the need to play with your own stories, but also like practice these speeches, read them aloud. Does it sound right? Record it. What does it sound like? I think all of those
Mhm.
practice tips that you give us is just a great reminder. And I think the more we can do that in schools, the better. Historically, my old school, we used to have, and it was not my program, but I participated fully in it, was the teacher, our sixth grade teacher was our language arts guy. We were promoting public speaking in every possible situation. So we
Mhm.
had math class, we're giving presentations. You're having students stand up in front of the class to talk about anything, their opinions, whatever it was. So you have a lot of these informal moments that create the ease when it gets to those formal moments. Tell me a little bit more about some of these practice things that you think are valuable.
Yes. So the most that's all everything you said, Tom, I think is really important because let me first distinguish two terms which you brought up. Public speaking, which is and envisions this gigantic sphere. Most people don't do that. That
Hmm.
kind of visualizes like a somebody in a big stadium getting up
Hmm.
and riling up, the Tony Robbins type. But presentation skills is what people do every day, getting
Right.
up in front of a small group or a classroom, say in middle school or high school. And again, there's fear because your peers are there. You might not know the material so well. But like you were saying earlier, is that what did I do my summer vacation? Like that used to be the first, right? The first
Right.
exercise. Get up and tell so mastery of the subject is a major factor in reducing one's fear. Because
Hmm.
once you know what you're talking about, now it's a matter of techniques. Can you tell a compelling story that people will remember? Can you integrate dialogue so that the audience feels like they were there with you?
Hmm.
And so if I go back to some of these historical speeches, there are these compelling stories. Again, if we just stay, everyone knows Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, you feel the sweat of
Hmm.
this hot day in Washington, D.C., with all these people gathered. And again, we might not be on that level of a platform, but our words can have that kind of impact for the people around us. And that comes again from the ability to take time, use your own mind, and then I often say, Tom, practice with a peer, practice
Hmm.
with someone who's kind of your level, and like role reversal. They give
Hmm.
you feedback, you give them feedback, and see what lands and what goes over your head because it's oftentimes we know what we want to say, but it doesn't because we have what's called, I mentioned this, the curse of knowledge from the book Made to Stick. It's like we know what we want to say, and you mentioned math,
Good
getting
book.
up. But somebody, right, someone who doesn't know math is like, I have no idea what you just said. I'm lost. And so the next 12 things you'll say, they're trying to catch up. So by practicing this out loud to somebody can become very helpful to just see what is landing and what needs a little bit more work.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. You're talking about situations that are even more informal, right? I think a lot of folks might say, well, I don't have to give these big speeches, so how does this even apply? But it's even just like in the conversations, and I'm speaking for the folks that we work with are generally school principals, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
they they are speaking constantly. They're talking, sending messages to people constantly, and having that the clarity of content is usually not the issue, but still making sure those words come out right
Yes.
is of most importance because they're constantly being judged, and especially if it's in print, it's going to be a permanent that somebody can throw that back at them. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of these informal conversations or these informal situations where those skills are being tested anyway. So realizing that like, hey, this is still something I need to do if even if I'm not giving the speech or getting up in front of a crowd very often, it's
Hmm.
it's still important to have all these things. And I think even more so, it always bums me out when you have the leader of an organization, whether that be a school or a business or whatever, and they're deflecting before they even get up there, or like, oh, I'm terrible at this, or I can't do that. And like, that's not a good projection for everybody who's watching, right? You're the leader.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
being able to get up and talk about whatever it is and being confident in that and having conviction and being able to sell that conviction, like, hey, this is what we're about. That
Hmm.
I think is so valuable. And these little practicing things I think are wonderful to do, especially if
Hmm.
you don't have to do them with your own faculty, right? Maybe you go and have another peer or somebody who's outside of
Yes.
education or whatever it might be.
Yes. If
So,
I could add to that, Tom, I attend a lot of events here, like networking events, professional business luncheons in Orlando, where I live. And there's a president of a bank. I've seen him speak twice in person. Both times his bank like kind of financed, they were one of the major sponsors for the event. Both times he didn't present himself, he only introduced the speaker. And you might not be able to see this visually, but he gets up and all I see is the top of his head because he's reading word for word what's happening. And my thought is, this man is a CEO of a big bank. He
hmm
should walk, he should command. So that's one of my goals is to make sure the person's voice matches what I call their character or their position in life. And they should have this commanding presence when they open their mouth, in their when their body language, in
hmm
their eye contact, in their gestures. And if I could transition here
Sure.
to a main point of the book, if we go to Aristotle, who is he is his rhetoric is what is the philosophic basis of the book, where he has his rules of persuasion, ethos, logos, pathos. And the ethos is the character, the moral character of the speaker. So we can give tips on how to get better, but there's also some questions a speaker can ask themselves. Why should anyone trust me?
Right.
What evidence supports my claim? Am I treating my opponents fairly? Am I communicating to understand or to merely win? Like, what does this do for my audience? You know me, I'm very you focused, what I call
hmm
it. So, just a simple example, speaker gets up. You tell me how this sounds to your ear. Speaker gets up, and first thing out of his mouth is, today I'm going to show you A, B, and C. Okay, how about same speaker comes up and he says, today you will discover A, B, and C.
hmm
Already now that for the second one, we're leaning in because he's saying what you will get in the audience.
hmm
We, as audience members, we don't go to attend speeches to see this great speaker. We go there in order to learn how we can benefit. So, principals, if we go to school principals, they have this position of power, but they need to persuade their audience of the value of those ideas that they are promoting and a good education in communication. Because the other really important thing you brought up, Tom, is written and spoken words.
hmm
There's a difference there. The written word is permanent.
hmm
It's something you can go back to over and over again. And there's certainly a value in that. But there's an immediacy with the spoken word. It's like,
hmm
and you tend to want someone to take an action now. You want to fire them up. If, and this is an example, if Patrick Henry wrote out his speech in calligraphy and handed it to 40 people in St. John's Church, do you think we'd have the revolution? No, he had to stand up there and use his body, give me liberty or give me death. So there's a big difference between the written and spoken word for communication purposes.
Oh yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the format here because you talk about the ethos, but then you break down,
Yes.
all these great speeches in those three.
Yes.
Those
Pillars of persuasion, I call
There
them.
you
Yeah.
go, pillars of
Hmm.
persuasion. Yeah,
Hmm.
ethos, logos, and pathos. And
Yes.
I think it's interesting from that perspective, right? So it's not only like, hey, this is a great speech because he was doing this or she was doing this. It's a great speech because how did they attack these elements? And I think that's a really super valuable part of this book because it's not, once again, it's not just looking at, oh, this was a great speech. This is what I got from it. It's like, let's break it down. Like, what is actually happening
Hmm.
here? and so cool to dive deeper into those speeches themselves.
Yeah,
Most history
yeah,
books are going to have like a paragraph about this thing, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. If I
in
could
yeah, go
just
for it.
with what you said, and particularly for your audience, because here's where I want to praise the the work you're doing and the audience you're doing. So I talked about moral character, and
Sure.
this is something that in schools, in Catholic schools, this was instilled in me,
Hmm.
okay? Like really be good, be a good person, be trustworthy, uphold certain virtues in life. So again, that's the first one. That's the ethos. Then
Hmm.
the second part, the logos, I want to unpack that a little bit, is
Sure.
have a structure, have if a give evidence to support your claims. So don't just say randomly what's off the top of your head and then say, trust me, because I know it and you don't. No, that's not persuasive. That's forcing someone to follow without really grasping. So have a logical structure, which is the logos, and then the pathos is the part where, again, what mentioned with the you focus, having paying attention to the audience, because the audience comes in with their own context, their own sets of biases,
Hmm.
and we as a good presenter, we need to recognize that, and we need to guide them along from where they were when they walked into the event
Hmm.
to where we'd like them to be when they go out. Now, is this manipulation? Some have, if we look at some of the great, we would say, great dictators who were very pathos oriented. If we go to history,
Hmm.
Adolf Hitler, in my book, I mentioned Hitler and Vladimir Lenin, incredibly emotional, totally getting their audience all fired up. That's an effective speaker, but there's no moral character there.
Hmm.
Like it is only blind emotion and it whips up this frenzy who are not open to reason. So Aristotle would reject that. And
Hmm.
sadly, I mean, in the book, I show the contrast is Winston Churchill, who was that same era. And he came in with his, we shall never surrender. We shall fight them on the beaches. He was the
Hmm.
voice of reason compared to these dictators who were these rabble rousers. So I think it's even important historically to know that public speaking is a powerful, you have a powerful platform. You can influence a lot of people for good or sadly for evil.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely you can definitely see that there's such a we have such a plethora of folks who are speaking from purely pathos only, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, online you can see people just
Oh,
yelling at
yeah.
each other constantly, right?
Yes.
But more so when you're referencing these great leaders, or I shouldn't say great leaders, but
Important. They were
in,
important.
important figures of
Yeah.
history. They
Hmm.
obviously had the ability to give great speeches. There's no way that they would have been able to achieve what they were able to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
But if you have that moral standard behind it, then you can use that power for good. And
Yes.
I think we recognize that in our organizations or in our classrooms, whatever.
Hmm.
We see the kids who are leaders. And it's like, okay, well, you've got this skill. You might have a slight advantage on this skill. So let's make sure we get that
Hmm.
other side of it. And if we
Yeah.
develop those pieces, then
Hmm.
there's no reason why every kid, every person in our organization couldn't have those skills.
Yes. Yes. And actually, let's also, Tom, just talk about the practical advantages for students. Eventually, they'll go on job interviews.
Hmm.
Knowing how to hold yourself, how to compose yourself, how to quickly respond to questions, good presentation skills will help you with that. Leadership, you get a job, now you want to advance. You're in a different role where 2 weeks ago you were with someone and you were peers, but you're more advanced. You take your communication skills more seriously and
Hmm.
you're promoted and now the relationship is different. So students running like a school newspaper or something like that or
Hmm.
debate teams, there's formal structures there. So there are ample opportunities for students to see the value here. And if we could talk about shy people, introverts, because oftentimes we think, oh, I can never do that. I'm too
Hmm.
shy. I'm too introverted. And what I always, that's what Carrie Ann, my dearest, is college professor, 25 years. But through some training, she realized that it's really important what the audience needs to hear. I
Hmm.
often say it's we know what we want to say, but it's more important what they need to hear than what you want to say. And the
Hmm.
more you make that emphasis on what the audience can benefit, the less stress you have on yourself. And introverted people can be just as effective. Steve Jobs, it's a famous at Stanford, not far from you, that
Hmm.
his famous commencement speech, I think 2005, to students. It's like that is one of the top speeches, not a rabble-rousing speech, but by someone who we could definitely say is an introvert. He was not the outgoing type of some of
Hmm.
these other, like an Elon Musk, for example, as a contrast here. But the other side, if I'll just say this and let you jump in, when people say, "Oh, I don't fear speaking. I love getting up in front of an audience. I'm a ham, and I have a little bit." And then my answer to them is, "That's great, but do you know when to shut up?"
Yeah.
Because being concise is really important, whereas people will tune out if you just keep going on and on. My mother would say, "Oh, he loves hearing the sound of his own voice, and he's listening with his mouth." As an example, because when you're having a conversation and all you're waiting for them to do is shut up so that you can say what you want, this
Right.
is not effective communication. So there is definitely some, as I say, there's a more effective and a less effective way to communicate. And I'm all about the more effective way.
Yeah, for sure. I think both groups, both kinds of people can work their way towards that center, right? You
Yes.
can get a shy person to talk. I spend a lot of time talking. I spend a whole lot of time not talking because I'm much more of an introvert to start off, but my job pushes me to be an extrovert sometimes. But then you
Yes.
have those hams that they've also got to recognize that how can I be more concise or how can I pick my moments, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. But you also hit on something, listening skills. If we look at, like, say, middle schoolers, the more listening skills you can develop, that's part of effective communication, which
mhm.
is respectfully, like, disagreeing with someone and giving them their turn and then saying, "Okay, I never thought of that. How about this, though, as an alternative? This is where I was going." Again, this is the kind of discourse we want to have
Oh yeah.
which we don't have enough of it in the culture. But if, as I started at the top, if we fix the education system, everything from there will go, we can fix so many other problems.
Oh yeah. And yeah, and kids don't start out putting each other down in terms of what they think. In kindergarten, they're almost just happy to be there.
Yes, that's right. That's
And I
right.
think at some point you build up your opinions or you build up your fears or whatever it might be that allows you to say or not say what you want to say that then dictates how conversation goes. But if we can get them to talk a little bit more together and to be able to have the
Mhm.
conversation, I mean, actually listen and respond to what the person said is such a huge thing. I think it
Yeah.
sticks out when an adult talks to a kid and they're like, wow, that kid can hold a conversation with an adult. That's pretty amazing. Right. And
Hmm.
vice versa. You see the adult who can't hold the conversation.
Right. Right.
So valuable.
Definitely.
We often will try to push kids and teachers to assign and receive 90-second responses to things, especially if they can
Mm.
do it in audio because it's nice and short. So
Yeah.
in 90 seconds or less, can you get out what you need to say and cut out all the fluff, but still make your point? And
Hmm.
I often think of like when we think about books, you've got like J.R. Tolkien who wrote, I don't know, a billion pages, right, for the whole Lord of the Rings series. And then you have
Hmm.
somebody like Seth Godin, obviously different, they're achieving
Yeah.
different things with their writing,
Hmm.
but Seth Godin's like power packed,
Yes.
very short books,
Hmm.
but every word has been thought about and
Yeah.
crafted. So
Yeah.
learning how to be that person in the middle in
Hmm.
conversation and our writing and everything else, I think is super valuable. And just what you always say, it's clarity and confidence. If you've got those two things, then why wouldn't you participate in that conversation? Or why wouldn't you throw your hat in the ring when it comes time to stand
Hmm.
up for something?
Thank you, because that last sentence you said was something, if I could emphasize, if there's like a takeaway, you know, I'll just ask the adults in the audience and even students, has there ever been a time in your life where you heard something and you wanted to speak up and you didn't? And how did you feel afterwards? And my book is about enabling you to speak up Because if you develop your character, if you work on your logical arguments, your logical reasoning, and your emotional connection, even in disagreeing with the person, you will have that courage to get up. Again, if we talk about the figures who I cover, two of them lost their lives. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr. were courageous speakers, but they lost their lives for that. I don't advocate people losing their lives for getting up, but develop that muscle of saying, I disagree, or I think there's another way to this. And what it does, it boosts your own image of yourself, again, strengthens your own moral character, and it undercuts the bully type who feels
Hmm.
like they can just get up and dictate, whether they're in the seventh grade or whether they are college graduates or in a professional or even a principal. Hopefully, principals are principled enough. That doesn't come up for them. But certainly they meet people and you can tell those types.
Hmm.
So my if I could just say having the courage to speak up when no one else is. History remembers those who spoke up when it mattered most, and we have that opportunity ourselves.
Oh, that's such a good line. Yeah, so true. I'm not sure I even want to follow that. But I think we always talk about in our little education talks, what is the purpose of what are we after here with education? It's like, are we preparing them for jobs? Yeah, on some level, sure, we were preparing the jobs. But the more we boil it down, you ask all the whys, why? And we come down to this fact that we really want students to become more truly themselves, right? To reach their potential, whatever that is, and to become the
Yes.
person that in the Catholic world that we would say is that God made them to be, right?
Hmm.
So to fully
Hmm.
realize that person, they need to come a long way in terms of being able
Yes.
to think correctly and then to be able to articulate those thoughts, feel confident that they can stand up for what matters to them, right? So being able to advocate for themselves and others who
Yeah.
can't advocate for themselves. I think I can't find any other way to fully describe what we're trying to do. Of course, they're going
Yeah.
to learn math and they're going to learn science
Yeah.
along the way. They're going to learn lots of things along the way. But ultimately, that's what we're after. We want great
Yeah.
people in society. We want
Yep.
awesome people making cool things and not being jerks about it, right?
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
you should be able to invent the greatest thing in the world and not have to hurt anybody along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. If
So,
I could add to that, Tom, and this will
yeah.
be my last thing is in order to do that, you need to make choices
Hmm.
every single step of the way. You have a choice. Good or bad, right or wrong. Again, I'll come back to the character part. Working on my character. Is this good for my character? Because if we take care of ourselves, then the rest of the people, it's kind of like the airplane mode. Put the mask on yourself first so that you can take care of the child.
Right.
And here, if we build our own moral character so we can function as adults in the outside world, it'll make things a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
choice. Mhm.
Oh, so good. So good. I'm gonna have to pull these two lines out and just highlight them. As we get close to the end here, there was always two questions I ask. Is first off, is
Yes.
there anything else that you want to make sure that the readers are obviously listeners now, but then readers of the book are gonna get? Most important thing. And then number two, if
Mhm.
somebody's hearing this and going, yes, you're speaking my language. I want to do, I want to become a better speaker. What's that first easy step? And maybe for a principal out there, their first step might be thinking, how do I incorporate this more? But what would you say to those two things?
Sure. Well, number one, you could follow me. I write regularly. I have a lot of free material out there, like a Substack post, what I call rhetoric tips.
Hmm.
Um, I'm up to like number 55. Once a week, I'll send out something that's just a simple tip how you could better communicate,
Hmm.
improve yourself as a communicator. So that's a simple, like low resistance entry point.
Hmm.
But because this is something I love doing, great products, great ideas, poorly delivered, they tug at my heart. It's like, no, I want to help. I want to
Yeah.
help these people. They can go so much farther. And that's where a good coach or advisor comes in because
Hmm.
sometimes we think we're good enough,
Hmm.
but if we're looking, I often say Tom Brady didn't, Michael Jordan had coaches. They were world-class athletes, but not only a head coach, they had personal trainers, they had nutrition coaches. And so I recommend getting coached, having an objective expert to help you. Certainly read the book. It's the lowest hanging fruit that I could say, but I have a lot of different materials out there that can help people in their journey. Speaking with Purpose.llc is the website if you want to track me down and be more aware of what you consider a good speaker and not so good a speaker.
Hmm.
You mentioned the 90 seconds earlier. I think audiences are judging a speaker from the moment their name is announced, the way they walk to the lectern, the first words out of their mouths. Okay. We want to, what I say, open with a bang. When a speaker just gets up there and says, "Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here," audience is already zoning out. And the problem with short attention spans and distractions, such as smartphones, is we need to keep them engaged the whole time. And that's by asking questions, by getting engagement between the speaker and the audience. I often say, and that this can be a takeaway, an effective presentation is a dialogue, not a monologue. And that's what we're doing here, Tom. We're
Yeah.
having a dialogue. It's not a monologue. So yeah, that's something that I could close out with.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So yeah, speaking with purpose.llc, that's the website.
Yes.
The book is Voices of Reason, Lessons from Liberty's Leaders.
Yeah. Available on Amazon. Yep.
And anybody out there who wants a copy of this, I'd be happy to make it available to you. So,
Yes, I will as well. Yes. And for schools, I think this can work in schools as a guide. If I could just say this last thing, Tom.
sure.
Burundi, Central Africa, English is their third language. There's a group there of student leaders. We went through all 11 chapters of the book, chapter by chapter, with some of the written exercises, kind of like as the school program. That's
Mhm.
something I'd love to do in the United States, is take on a group of ambitious communicators who want to advance. And yeah, so that's something that schools can certainly incorporate.
Yeah. Well, that's a challenge to our listeners. Anybody out there who wants to accept the challenge from Robert,
Yes,
happy to help you out with that.
absolutely. I'll send you the books myself.
Well, thank you, Robert, for joining us today and for sharing the book and sharing your thoughts. It's always a pleasure. And
Likewise.
I love the way that you're pushing the ideals forward. It's not just about a skill, but there's a purpose behind it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll see you
Thank
next
you all.
time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on In Search of Catholic School Excellence. We hope you heard something inspiring or something you'd like to try at your own school. Please share this episode and leave a review to help others find us. To see how we can support your journey toward excellence, visit ilovemytechteam.com. Until next time, celebrate what's working and keep reaching for what's possible.